So I'll call the meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. And can I get, what? Okay, can I get a approval of the agenda? Moved by Councillor Glenn and seconded by Councillor Stephen. All in favor? That passes. Can I get a confirmation of the, for the agenda, it had to be as amended, actually. Are you still good with that? With 1, 2? Yeah. Oh, so it actually had to be as amended. I forgot about that because it was amendment. Is that still good with you? You both read it? Everybody read it? Okay, so all in favor? Thank you. Can I get a confirmation of the minutes? Moved by Councillor Stephen, seconded by Councillor Tozo. All in favor? It passes. Can I get any disclosures of pecuniary interest? No, none? Okay, so we have a briefing from Karen Stantucci, Director of Public Works and Solid Waste, which will present to speak to the committee regarding the automation of solid waste collection system.
Hi, thank you. I'm excited tonight to be able to talk to you about the automation of our solid waste collection system that we're looking at. Just give me a second here. I'm pleased to have most of our group here from our solid waste department, our manager Jason Hollett, Adam Mueller, and Carl Smith, who are both supervisors with the group, and Brent, who's been helping us through this process as well with our fleet. As most of you know, our solid waste collection system is very manual right now. You see our drivers, they pick up the garbage at the curb, throw it into the back of the truck. What we're looking at is automizing that system. As most of you are also aware, in 2025, we'll be moving into transition of our recycling materials. So come 2025, the collection and processing of recycling materials will go to the producers. So what we're looking at for this program here is only our solid waste and organics program. As you can see, this is the truck. This is this type of thing that we're looking at. It's a truck. It has an arm that comes out. It has a type of bin which gets distributed to all of the residents, and it gets dumped from this truck. The bins are crucial to this program. We will have to supply bins to all of the residents. As you can see, the top picture here is the bins which are used by Simcoe County. Most of the bins being used by a lot of these other municipalities are about the same size as what they were collecting prior to. We will need to have some discussions at a further point in time where we can talk about diversion, and if there are different diversion things that we need to incorporate, we would need to look at those before we moved ahead with a program like this. Timing is critical here. 75% of our solid waste vehicles are due for replacement over the next 6 years. So this is crucial in terms of being able to get the equipment that we need in place in order to move this program forward. There are a number of challenges that go along with this program, and a lot of them are associated with the bins and the use of the bins. So things like cart placement, density and topography, on-site storage, street parking, narrow streets, uneven terrain, snow, wind, accessibility, long driveways, and flights of stairs can all create some issues. What we do know, though, is that there are a number of municipalities throughout Ontario and throughout North America that have already implemented these programs. So there's lots of learning that has already been gained from other places, and we've been working with a lot of other municipalities already to figure out how can we deal with some of these issues that may arise. One of the big factors in looking at this program is the safety. I'm a Canadian registered safety professional, so safety is very important to me. I've spent a significant amount of time looking at how can we reduce some of the injuries in our solid waste group. Over the last 10 years, we've had 89 injuries, 3 of them being critical injuries. CUPE has stated that solid waste collection is one of the most hazardous jobs that they have in their municipal work environment, with about 35% of solid waste collectors each year having injuries. There are a number of advantages to the residents as well. The carts are a convenient method of disposing of trash, much like a garbage can. It is an area for them to put their garbage. The wheeled carts are fairly easy to maneuver, safe for residents because there's no carrying or lifting of the cans. The capacity will typically stay about the same. However, there is an advantage that there could be a higher weight limit. So for people like me who have 2 cats where I might be emptying cat litter on a regular basis, I can't put both litter boxes in at the same time because I go over the weight limit. So without this being a manual job, you don't have those same weight restrictions that you do on your normal cans. Carts will keep out rodents, pests, birds, that sort of thing. They've got a lid on them, so they are better for that environment. Help eliminate overservice. So there are areas where we have multiple units, so 4, 5, 6 units. Sometimes our guys don't know how many units are in that particular building. This would mean that everyone would get assigned a bin and those bins would be out there. Or if it was a larger number, 4 or 5, they may decide to go with some larger bins and everyone incorporate into one. But it puts a little bit more control on what's being put out. Carts are provided and maintained by the municipality, so we would distribute those. We would also maintain those carts. And we really hope it'll create a cleaner, healthier neighborhood with less litter on the streets, and pickup has been a huge issue throughout the city. We've spent a lot of time on that. So hopefully this will prevent birds from tearing stuff apart and from garbage bags from getting ripped open. Oops. Huge portion of this program will be public education and promotion and engagement. It will have to happen through the whole 6-year period because we'll bring sections of the city on at different times, and we'll have to keep repeating those public education systems. We typically start about 6 months prior with the communications. We'd look at project pages. We'd look at information on the city's waste app, detailed waste cart guides that would go out with the carts, detailed print and communication, city-run information systems, interactive booths at events, targeting communications to different user groups, whether it be seniors, whether it be different residential areas, whether it be Queens and other students, and having mobile staff on site as the bins get delivered and over those first little while to deal with issues that come up with the individual residents. Staffing is also a big consideration with this program. Automatic trucks will take 1 person. A number of semi-automatic trucks will need to be put in place as well. There will be areas where we won't be able to just use an automated truck. Where you've got parking and that sort of thing, someone will have to bring the cart out to the curb and it will get dumped from there. Based on our attrition rates over the past 5 years, we would expect 10 to 12 employees over the 6-year time period to be we expect an attrition rate of 10 to 12 employees over the 6-year time period. It's expected that 15 positions will be affected and either not replaced or be placed into other areas within Public Works or possibly within Fleet or other departments. With that said, there's also a number of new positions that would be required as part of the transition to automatic trucks, which include cart maintenance, delivery, and communications. We've been working with the union on this. We have met with them a couple times. We have worked to collaborate. We have spoken with all the staff that would be directly affected by this as well, in terms of hoping to work with them as much as possible and minimize or have no layoffs. Bylaw changes, there will be a need for bylaw changes. The solid waste management bylaw will have to change as a result of this, but also as a result of the transition that's happening in recycling. So it will be a fairly major rewrite, incorporating some of this and some of the transition. The property standards bylaw and the yards bylaw will also have to change. In those, they both state that you can't put garbage bins in front of buildings. There will be select times where that will have to happen with this program. If people don't have access to a side yard, a backyard, or a garage, there will be a need that they could put them in front of their vehicles, or in front of their premises. What have we done? We've done extensive research on other similar municipal programs in Ontario and elsewhere. We've created a transition plan for the fleet replacement. We've looked at staffing and how to ensure that we can keep our staff. We've compiled a multi-year budget for the project, and we've met with the union to discuss projects and other staffing program plans. So I wanted to give you a general overview. There's a lot of information in that report. It is a fairly major change, so any questions?
So, questions, Brandon, Tozo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Thank you for the presentation, Director Santucci. I have a few questions with regards to the discussion of existing staff and the process of which the jobs are going to be affected. One is just in regards to the report stated that QP 109 was fine with this process and you got them to be signed off on this. Does the collective agreement allow for surplusing? Like if somebody's job is considered surplus, are they then automatically reassigned or would they bid for other positions?
Brad, can you help me with that one?
I think to answer your question, we do not expect that to be even a concern. We honestly don't. We looked at this, looked at the model, we looked at the attrition rates, even without the attrition rates. We have opportunities that are going to be arising in public works that we'll be looking to try to bring people in. Even with the reduction on the solid waste team side, we'll still be seeking additional employment opportunities from outside of the city with this. So it's really not a concern. We do not see that happening whatsoever.
I think in addition to that, we have had a really hard time in terms of finding driver laborers. I think all of the groups are looking for driver laborers as well. So.
Okay, thank you. Follow-up question is, you mentioned that in the report that there were WSIB claims. Do you know how many claims there are? I think you briefly mentioned it.
I don't have the exact number of WSIB claims here in front of me. I believe about, sorry, I'm thinking of the number. I believe it, somewhere in the order of 40% resulted in lost time, resulted in medical aid, if not lost time.
Okay. Okay, that's my questions. Thank you. Great presentation.
Any other questions? Councillor Glenn?
Thank you, and through you, thank you, Director Santucci. I am absolutely thrilled to see you moving this direction. My concerns about the health and safety of your staff, I can certainly echo having seen it in other municipalities. So I think this is going to be great. I do have a couple of questions. So when I was looking through the report, I noticed in terms of when you're planning to purchase vehicles, there's a gap in 2027 of any purchasing. Is there a reason for that gap being there? It's a curiosity question.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the reason that there's a gap is just the natural replacement criteria that we use for vehicles of this type. So it just so happens that that year there is no requirement for any additional or replacement vehicles.
Okay, so 1 year of breathing room. Okay, that's good. And I noticed that we're looking to apply for some funding from FCM. How likely do you think we are to receive funding?
That's a great question, Councillor Glenn. We've actually done some evaluation with Troy Bahari and the grants team, and it does look like we could apply for some funding for this program, obviously for the electric vehicle as well. So yes, we feel there's a strong possibility for funding, and we can certainly make sure we keep you up to date on that based on your position with representing us at FCM.
Thank you. And I was just, I noted that it was pilot funding rather than capital funding. Is there a reason for going for pilot funding? Is it that we're planning on testing the electric vehicles that you're proposing?
Yeah, that's, again, through you, Mr. Chair, that's another great question. And really, we're trying to take the same approach that we did with the transit study that we've done with the 2 electric buses, and we feel like 1 to 2 would be appropriate. The other thing that we have going on at the same time is the municipal fleet electrification feasibility study. So we're obviously going to get some great detail from that. And secondly, the infrastructure required to convert this entire solid waste fleet to electric or something else, based on obviously the location and the infrastructure that's there today, requires a bit of planning and work. So 1 to 2 would be our max, and we do need to kind of work with the operators and the operations team, much like we did with transit, to get comfortable with those vehicles from a training perspective.
Okay, great, thank you. And I just have one sort of two-part question. It's with regards to the areas where we're going to move to semi-automatic. And so just sort of a bit more explanation of what the manual material handling load would potentially be for semi-automatic. And I noted that, you know, we're looking at changing the weight limitations for how much someone can put out. And for those residents in areas where it's semi-automatic, are they going to have a different weight restriction because it's semi-automatic rather than fully?
Yeah, so the semi-automatic is they would move the cart from the curb to behind the truck. They would still have an arm. The arms are a little bit different than you may have seen on the old trucks where we tried to retrofit them. These arms are designed for the trucks and have the same speed at which they can lift those. So it would be moved, and then the truck is doing all the manual lifting on that. So in the semi-automatic areas, or semi-manual areas, I don't see there being a difference. I guess our concern, we may still have some weight limits on those, so they probably won't be the same as what they are right now. But in the winter, if they can't make it through there may be additional. We may need to look at something different. There will be a bit of a phase where we are learning this process as we go through as well, because it is new to the city.
Councillor Stephen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. Thank you for this really detailed report. It answered most of my questions just from reading it. I was really pleased to see, you know, the timing of the truck replacement. This feels like a really great opportunity and an obvious thing we should be doing. I really appreciate the QP consultation. I think the enhancements to employee safety are incredible, and learning from other municipalities as well. I appreciate the plan for the rollout of doing downtown last. I think that's very smart. And keeping animals out, certainly the District Diamond, that's a huge problem in the suburbs. And as well the education and promotion to sort of allow for troubleshooting specific regions on, you know, one at a time. I think the rollout plan is really great. I'm just wondering a little bit more about the electrification. Councillor Glenn already asked part of my question, and I was wondering about the fleet electrification feasibility study, if I named it correctly, I hope. Because it's related to this, I'm wondering when will we get to see that study, and will that help us to know if and when we can purchase more electric trucks potentially?
Through you, Mr. Chair. That's a great question, Councillor Stephen. The municipal fleet electrification feasibility study, we expect to receive probably late in the fourth quarter. Some information we'll be able to utilize to include in our upcoming 2024 capital presentation and plan. But the outcome of that study, we will hope to utilize as much as possible and build it into our upcoming plans. Obviously, a big part of that is the charging infrastructure. The vehicles, there are vehicles available at the moment from certain OEMs. It's the charging infrastructure piece that we're really working on, with also some consultation from Utilities Kingston, I should mention, is also at the table with us on that study.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. As far as charging infrastructure goes, is that something that could be done in collaboration with Kingston Transit as well, or is that a completely separate thing?
So ironically, the studies are being done by the same consultant who specializes in this, HDR. So there is some sharing of information, as you can imagine, with respect to transit and what we would call our municipal fleet. So there is some collaboration between the two studies, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing as no more questions, we'll move on to business, which is automation of solid waste collection systems. So we received the report and the briefing. Did they get to talk to me about it? Is there another presentation? No. Okay, so I guess we can move towards this and see if there's any members of the public who want to speak to this report about automation of solid waste collection systems. If you could state your name and
Hi there, my name's Justin Hogan. I'm with Solid Waste as an employee. Sorry, I just jotted some things down. It might be a little mismatched here, but to start off, the safety aspect, I really appreciate the safety aspect in the city wanting to protect its workers. There's a lot of dangerous things with solid waste, for sure. I'm not sure going with the automated arm and the full automation is the best way. I think it itself will, especially with the semi, with the workers still out, having to move the bins that are now heavier in 2 bins, whatnot. Right now it's a lot more efficient with a single bag to be able to go in between cars and grab them, or being able to get a bag out of a green bin. Every bin needs to be dumped, no matter what. If it's put out, you can't just grab it and put it in. It's a whole process. Going around cars now with these heavy bins, there's more risk there. Dragging over snowbanks, if that's gonna be a thing, like all that extra pulling, that's a concern. Again, totally appreciate the safety aspect. Going over the 86 injuries over the past 10 years, a lot of those were recycling as well. Well, I can't say a lot. I assume some are recycling that would not be there anymore. The safety equipment that we've received in just the last 5 years, I'm sure has drastically reduced those injuries. It'd be interesting to see what the injuries are now, or at least a 5-year. We used to have a lot of cuts on our legs because we were allowed to wear shorts. We switched to pants and stuff like that. Since then, I'm not sure if there's been any or very few leg cuts, which would be a lot of these and stuff like that. On safety, going to a single operator truck, when I'm driving, I love my guy in the back, and he appreciates me too, because they see things that I don't. The cyclist that's coming to pass you now, or the joggers hate sidewalks, they love roads. It's so easy. We got a buzzer, we communicate, we got a system, and I'm sure he's saved some accidents. So that extra set of eyes, love it. Priceless. Another thing in this report that's really good is the investment in the education of the public. And whether this goes through or doesn't go through, if it's approved, I really feel that the public we need more investment in that. The reason why we have cuts is because there's things in the garbage that aren't supposed to be there. The reason why we have ripped over bags on the streets from raccoons or birds or animals is because there's organics in the garbage that's not supposed to be there. More education, 6 years, whatever, it doesn't need to be the $1 million, but public for our safety, that would be great. On safety again, in the report it was talking about construction waste or dust or debris or loose stuff in the garbage and all that stuff. If people had bags, if they just put it in a bag instead of loose, that solves that issue. On the point of reducing staff and then hoping to only have 15, I believe it was 12 or 15.
You have 30 seconds.
Thank you. We're very efficient right now and very good at our jobs, and we move quick, and we are generally, well, speaking for me, around 5 seconds to stop. 10 seconds if there's a car on a curb where I can go, get the stuff, put it in, move on. If it's a nice straight stretch, I don't even get on the back of the truck, I'll walk. The truck doesn't stop, I'm just throwing it in. Very efficient. With this automated system, it will be at least 10 to 12 seconds, according to YouTube,
Thank you.
per dump, per bin. So we're gonna be 20 minimum seconds per stop. With our current routes, with the current trucks, we would not fit that in a day. It won't.
Thank you very much.
Work. Thank you very much.
Do we have any other members of the public who wish to speak? You have 5 minutes. Can you get your name too?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to staff for the presentation, very thorough. I learned a lot from it. So, Williamsville resident. I'm a retired geophysicist, fairly driven, and take an interest in how this part of the city's operations work. So I have written this down, and I plan to give it to the clerk. But it's just in point form right now, so maybe I'll write it up a little bit more thoroughly at the end. So just one point is, you're looking to move to a completely closed bin system, right? Some apartment buildings have that now, but most residential has the smaller bins that are open on top. So the operators can see what's in it, right? If they see inappropriate things in there, they can leave them on the curb as opposed to putting them into the system at that point. So when the bin is closed, the arm can't see that. So that strikes me as being significant. You're going to wind up with stuff in there that maybe shouldn't be in there. I think the fellow who was just speaking talked about that. I'm wondering with the accidents if there could be a more detailed description given on the types that occur. Is the vehicle colliding with parked cars, or is the operator falling, or that kind of thing, so we can learn more. This was touched on also in the presentation, but I think it's very important as we get into more consciousness of climate change and use of alternative energy, is the charging stations for the vehicles which we're going to be acquiring. Right now we have 2 e-buses, right? And we have a number of other City of Kingston vehicles that are e-vehicles. So we're getting experience with that. These vehicles are larger and specialized. Next point is on the format, right? So right now we're doing weekly collection of, say, containers, whether it's cans or whatever, bottles, that kind of thing. And then the next week we're doing papers and plastics. At one point, we had talked about doing each one weekly. This is a few years ago, prior to the pandemic. So are we going to stay with that format, where we have each type of recycling done every other week? Because the thought had been that people would recycle more if they could get it out each week. Now, green bins are already in place in terms of it being a wheeled closed top format. Are those going to stay as they are? And how will that be recycled in the new system? That's the next point is on the consultation. I'm happy you're doing consultation with other cities in the province. I'm wondering if we could widen that out into looking at some European examples, because I think countries like Germany and Denmark are in advance of Canada on all things involving the environment. And there could be some valuable lessons to be learned there if we were to connect with their professionals on this at the civic level. And my last point has to do with the new residential development that's in progress in the city. We're under direction from the province to build a certain number of homes over the next number of years. And I think Kingston is doing everything we can to do its part on that. Some districts in the city are going to see more residential development that's new than others. And I think it's important that we understand that. Say large developments taking place. I know Paul Martin has something really big planned out on Princess Street west of Cataraqui Town Center. He must have put in 10 apartment towers out there, right? And the storage areas that he already has. So something like that. There's new single-family homes going in. Obviously, Princess Street, we're seeing a major redevelopment there. Several towers already in, and some more on the way. So those are my main points, and I will write those out in a more detailed manner for the clerk. Thank you.
30 seconds. Oh, thank you. Okay, so I guess staff can answer the questions from the public. It's
Sorry, could you just repeat that? I didn't hear you.
Oh, if staff could answer the questions that the public had or address any of the issues.
There was a large number of questions there.
So,
I think a couple things. One is the recycling will not be included in this program as the recycling will move to to producers. That it is a transition that the municipality will no longer be picking up or processing recycling after 2025. In terms of the larger buildings, multi-residential buildings have to be, the garbage is dealt with by the property owner. We only pick up at buildings that are less than 7 units, unless they're actually paying us for that pickup. So those ones, again, will not be dealt with through this particular program. I don't remember what some of the other ones were.
there were also, well, from the first, there was a comment about, not sure if the automated arm is the best way to go, and also about the challenges about navigating to getting all the items, and wondering about the injuries, increased injuries with cuts, and about having the second driver there. I don't know if you can comment on that.
Yeah, so I think this one may touch on both of those in terms of second eye. The new trucks will have cameras. We will also look into the potential. I know a lot of municipalities are using AI to see what is actually being tipped into the garbages. It won't help for that particular tip, but it will help if you have people that are continually putting stuff in the garbage that shouldn't be in the garbage. So that will be one way. But definitely, we will look at cameras. I think some of the cameras on the trucks, there can be up to 10 to 12 cameras on some of the trucks in some of the municipalities, so it gives you views from a number of areas. The tipping on most of those trucks is about 10 to 12 seconds, or 10 to 15 seconds. It will take a little bit longer. We are well within the numbers that other municipalities are doing, if we're not lower than the number of pickups that other municipalities are doing in the same period of time at this point in time.
Thanks. And there were questions about, are the green bins going to stay as they are, and consultations to widen consultations to countries like Germany and Denmark. Sorry,
I've got the fan beside me, so I'm just having a bit of a hard time hearing you. The green bins, we will need to look once we get the trucks and once we move forward with this. We have current green bins that are out there. Whether those green bins will be able to be used with the system that we'll be moving to or not, we'll have to take a look at those. We have budgeted for all of those to be replaced in addition to the garbage cans. So we will take a look at those as we go forward. There's a potential for that, and there is a potential that they may need to be either the lids on them changed or the whole bin changed.
And also, if you have looked at other countries like Germany and Denmark with what they were doing?
We have taken a look at some of those other countries. Most of them are moving to totally different types of systems. There's a lot of in-ground systems that people are using in municipal and urban areas. So we have taken a look at some of it. We have focused mainly on Ontario because we want to make sure the systems we're putting in place are going to work with the climate that we're working in.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything they want to add? Commissioner Joyce?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I would just add on some of the European models and some of the other models that we've seen out there, they are fairly progressive, admittedly so, but they're also quite expensive and require some fairly extensive infrastructure upgrades, because some of them are actually totally autonomous, and they involve having underground infrastructure in place for them to operate. It's quite advanced, but it's also quite expensive, and I don't think it's something that the City of Kingston can afford at this point.
Thank you. All right, so move on to committee questions. Councillor Stephen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. Just a couple of things that were brought up from the public, so Justin and Frank who spoke to us. One of the things that got me wondering about is if we're talking about this automation, and the report acknowledges very well that downtown is going to be complicated and other areas where there is no backyard or side yard or things like that. Given what Justin was describing, have staff talked about not using the bins in, say, the downtown area as one example for kind of the reasons he described about dodging between cars and pulling things over snowbanks and stuff? Is that an option, or do you have to commit to the entire city doing it as described?
No, we have taken a look at that. Number of different cities, you look at Guelph and they are really struggling with how they deal with their downtown area. They don't have bins for each owner. If you look at the restaurants and things that we have in the downtown, most of them don't have anywhere to store those bins. There will be other options that we will need to take a look at in some areas. There may be areas that we can do bins, but there may be some areas where we need to continue with either semi-automatic or with the manual type of collection we're doing now, or something totally different.
Okay, that's great, thank you. It's helpful to hear that
Yeah.
sort of we're open to the flow of whatever this is going to bring, because yeah, I can picture, again, in the suburbs this will work great, and in other locations maybe not.
Yeah,
So
and I
that's
think,
great.
if you look at different cities have used different options. So we need to find the options that are going to work best for our city. Some of that will be discovered through what we learn in the first couple years of implementation in Kingston.
That's great, thank you. The other thing that came up through this that I just wanted to check on, so it was described that right now it's really efficient and quick to grab a garbage bag, toss it in as you go, and with the arms, it sounds like it will slow down, and that's to be expected. 10 to 12 seconds is what I remember hearing. Director Santucci, you said this is within the range of other municipalities, and so that's fine. I'm just wondering, what if it does end up taking too long? What will staff do?
We would need to create a new route. So if we found that, each of our routes was going an hour over, we would create a new route for every 8 of those hours that are there.
Okay, that sounds reasonable. Thank you.
Any other questions from council members? Oh, Councillor Joyce, or Commissioner Joyce.
Wow.
You've been upgraded, or downgraded, actually.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. Just want to really focus that the purpose of this is really to start setting us moving in this direction, recognizing that there's a lot that we have to learn, and the intention is fully to do that and to amend and make changes as we deem necessary, and that'll come back to this committee when we're seeking to make some of those changes and as we get feedback on the implementations. So it is really going to be a learning thing. It is nice that we're doing this on the basis of a capital replacement plan that we'd have to do anyways, because it provides that phased-in approach and allows us to learn those ways, so that, if we find that things aren't working, then we look at, okay, what do we need to change, or maybe that doesn't change. So it is very flexible, and all we're seeking, of course, tonight is just, hey, are you okay with us starting to move in this direction? And it's a learning process, but it's a very solid way to move into this. That's for you, Councillor.
Thank you. Is there Councillor Tozo?
Thank you, your chair, through you. I got that reference, thank you. That's all.
Any other questions? No? I have a question for Director Santucci. I heard that there was, you were maybe wanting a motion to get it to the next council meeting, amendment, is that correct?
We had talked about that. I haven't actually talked to my commissioner about that yet. I think we're also good to go to the September meeting if need be, but if we could move it to the meeting next week, that would also, I actually think maybe we're better to wait till September so that those councillors that haven't seen it have some time to take a look at what is there, because there is a lot of information that's there.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Tozo, seconded by Councillor Stephen. That, any discussion? No? All in favor? That passes unanimously. Okay, so now moving on to number B, report received from the Kingston Environmental Advisory Forum. Are there any questions from the public? No. Huh? Oh, councillors first? Oh, is there any questions from councillors? Oh. Councillor Glenn?
Through you. So my biggest area of questions has to do with our air quality indexes. And I know Councillor Stephen and I have both been contacted by a member of the public who's concerned. After spending a bit of time with the report and looking into it, my questions are around the air quality health index. So the weightings that are given to O3, NO3, and the fine particulate matter seem to mask the impact of the fine particulate matter. So I noticed that there was some mention made of the fine particulate matter later on. However, it seems that we're measuring it at a very high level. There was no time mentioned in terms of this, so the cutoff value is 50 micrograms per meters cubed. And in the research that I've had a look at and been presented with, it appears that there are several health problems with it at lower values. So I just wonder if there's anyone available to sort of comment on why this value was chosen, and then I probably have a couple of follow-up questions about it.
Yes?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, Paul McClatchy, Environment Director. I also received that information that was passed along, and it's a very good analysis and thorough analysis by the individual. The fine particulate matter reporting that was done in the State of the Environment report is taken from Ontario Air Quality. And the way they report their air quality is in 24-hour increments. Well, they measure it hourly, but then they report out on a 24-hour increment. So the numbers we're seeing in the State of the Environment report reflect the number of days in which a 24-hour increment was above a certain level. In this case what they would call a moderate health risk level. That being said, the World Health Organization and also Canadian ambient air quality standards also report on annual averages for many air contaminants, including fine particulate matter. That wasn't included in the report, and I think that's an oversight. That's genuinely an oversight. I think it should be, because it provides a more blended perspective on the air quality that we're all breathing here. So I think that actually wasn't brought up in the review of the report by Keith, but I think it's a good thing to carry forward in the next year's report.
Okay, thank you. I'm hopeful that what we can see is a couple of different levels reported. So the research that I had opportunity to review looked at levels of about 30 to 35 micrograms. And at that level, in young, healthy populations, there was noticeable change in cardiac function. So polarization and depolarization of the heart, which leads to arrhythmias, and is particularly bad for gentlemen. So that's one level, because what we're also seeing is increased inflammation markers throughout the system, which are indicative of the development of lung issues, particularly if it's prolonged, and we're not getting that value. I'm also going to suggest that they mark at a lower value, which is in the 20 to 25 range, because that's where persons with asthmatic issues are then impacted, and probably people with COPD. So I think we're not getting that information out there and recognizing what's going on. Unfortunately, we will have very little control over it because most of this is now coming from those wildfires that we're seeing and the smoke that's coming in. But in terms of public awareness, I think it's important that we at least make sure that there's an awareness that this is happening. I think it will also be supportive of the public in general supporting environmental initiatives, because that's why we're seeing this happen. So that's a suggestion back, and certainly any other comments you'd like to make about that, I'd appreciate hearing.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, definitely, I accept that recommendation, and I'll bring it forward into the consideration of the next report.
And perhaps, consulting with public health, because they'll have the more relevant health indicators. So maybe just bridging that gap between there. I think most people are aware that this is a problem, but how much and who's impacted? And again, a lot of the research is relatively new. We haven't dug into it enough, I think. So it's emerging research, and keeping that connection with health is probably going to be helpful in terms of them being able to decide what kind of information to include and how to represent it.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. And that we can do quite easily, because there is a representative of public health on the Kingston Environmental Advisory Forum, so we can tap into that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Tozo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. I also have a question about air quality. So I'm looking at the chart and graph. I don't have expertise in this area. How much of this would you say would be, so we've had fewer bad air quality days, it looks like from this graph. How much of this do you think is attributable to Kingston, and how much of it is attributable to broader provincial changes to, say, like eliminating coal-fired plants and all those other changes that are occurring, just out of curiosity?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. That's really hard for me to say, other than I can parrot what Air Quality Ontario says, and they do recognize that the benefit of removing those coal-fired generating plants has had on air quality trends across the province, including Kingston. But as Councillor Glenn mentioned, wildfires have been particularly challenging this year, and we've all seen the effects on air quality there. So that's definitely going to show up in the 2023 data.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really my only question. Thank you.
Councillor Stephen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. Just back to air quality for a sec, since we're having an air quality party over here. I was wondering, on fine particulate matter, and thank you, Councillor Glenn, for bringing that up, and for acknowledging that, yes, that would be a really good measure to include next year. I'm wondering about open-air wood-burning fires. A resident has asked me about this recently, and I'm wondering, is there any way to quantify the contribution of open-air wood-burning fires to the fine particulate? Like, is there any way we can quantify this at all?
Through you, Mr. Chair. What I will say is that our State of the Environment report relies on data metrics that are already being collected. So I don't think anybody's collecting that data right now. But I think I can also add to that Kingston Fire and Rescue issues open-air burning permits. So we would be able to get data for the number of open-air burning permits issued, and then perhaps do a little bit of research into what kind of average impact an average fire might have, and go from there.
I wonder, I don't know how much value that would have, but I wonder if it might be an easy thing to look into and just to see. I'll leave that with staff. One other quick question, sorry. In the report, it mentions urban forest cover. I just wanted to check, does that mean actual forests, or does that mean, hey, we have trees in a park and the grass is cut around them? So just wondering, what do we actually decide as an urban forest?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So reference to an urban forest is the entire forest canopy in the urban area of the city of Kingston. So it does include parks, it does include woodlots, it does include trees and boulevards.
Okay, so if it was a bird's eye view looking down, it's basically the green trees that you see.
That's correct, yes. And the focus tends to be on the canopy layer. that precisely what you're talking about.
We like the leaves?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And the needles.
Okay. Is there any questions from the public? Frank?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Excellent discussion, I think. The report is also quite informative, and as my question also is on the ongoing theme of air quality. It's been very topical this year, and I'm wondering if we can learn a little bit more about the collection points where this data is assembled. I mean, for example, we've got half a dozen fire stations in the city. Does each fire station collect data on air quality, or is that done elsewhere? The reason I'm asking is my father was in the Royal Canadian Air Force as a meteorologist. So he was collecting data on temperature, and that's usually at the airport. So I'm wondering if we have other areas in the city where we're measuring this, or is it at the airport, or it's just sort of the general information? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the public? Seeing as none, we'll move it over to staff to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Dixon. That was one of the weaknesses in the air quality data identified through Keefe's review, is that air quality information for Kingston is collected at a single air quality monitoring station, which is indeed located near the airport. So it may not be particularly reflective of air quality, say, in the more northern or eastern parts of our municipality. There's not a lot we can do about that other than to add it to the commentary within future reports so that people understand that it's a single data point, or data location, I should say.
Thank you. I'm looking for a mover and a seconder moved by Councillor Tozo and seconded by Councillor Glenn to adopt the report. Any discussion? Councillor Glenn?
Just one other quick sort of query about what we're looking at in terms of land. I note that we don't seem to discuss the agricultural land or mention it very much in here in terms of its negative and positive environmental impact. I know in talking to Councillor Oosterhoff, he is of the opinion that there is actually a great deal more environmental benefit that we're getting that we may not be aware of. And is there a way to give consideration for that in future reporting, just so that we have more of that information?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, you're correct. Agricultural lands were not flagged specifically in the report as either a negative or positive or even quantified. But it's a number that is not difficult to obtain each year. So I'm happy to consider that in a future report.
Great, thank you very much. And I very much appreciate this. I think it's excellent that we're getting a handle on this and have data available to actually have a good conversation about the state of things in Kingston, both urban and rural. So thank you very much for all the hard work that's gone into this to everyone.
Any other discussion? Seeing as none, all in favor? And passes unanimously. So there are no motions and no notices of motion, no other business, no correspondence. So the date of the next meeting is, on the page, Tuesday, August 1st at 6, wait, no. Tuesday, October, that's like today. Tuesday, October 10th. And can I get mover and a seconder for adjournment? Moved by Councillor Tozo, seconded by Councillor Stephen. All in favor? There we go.